Mark my words, we will never be able to defeat terrorism in any of its forms until we deal with the problem of hypocrisy. Let's look at the latest example. The New York Times reports Maryland man planned to run down pedestrians at National Harbor, U.S. says. Better watch out for those Maryland men. They will run you down. They're as cold as ice. Federal prosecutors said Monday that they had filed a criminal charge against a 28-year-old man who they say planned to run down pedestrians on the National Harbor waterfront, a popular tourist site along the Potomac River near Washington. The man, Rondell Henry of Germantown, Maryland, was inspired by the terrorist group ISIS when he stole a U-Haul van from a parking garage in Alexandria, Virginia, on March 26, according to the United States Attorney's Office in Maryland. He has been charged with interstate transportation of a stolen vehicle. So, this was going to be the latest instance of vehicular jihad, a form of terrorism that's usually unstoppable because anyone can ram a car or a truck into a crowd of people. If a jihadi attempts to buy a bomb or starts stockpiling weapons, government agencies might catch him before the attack. But it's almost impossible to know when someone is planning a vehicular attack. So it's interesting that this guy got caught. Prosecutors say Mr. Henry, a computer engineer, drove the van early on March 27th to Dulles International Airport, where he got out and tried, unsuccessfully, for more than 2 hours to find a way through security. Mr. Henry then got back in the U-Haul and drove to the National Harbor in Maryland, arriving around 10 a.m., they said. According to prosecutors, Mr. Henry walked around looking for an ideal spot to mimic a 2016 Bastille Day attack in Nice, France, in which a truck barreled through a crowd of spectators, killing more than 80 people. Rondell Henry is a 28-year-old computer engineer from Germantown, Maryland. This means that he's fairly well educated. And yet he concluded that what his God really wants him to do in life is not work as a computer engineer, but slaughter unbelievers. And he took the 2016 Bastille Day vehicular attack in France as the model for his attack. Because the crowds at the National Harbor waterfront on March 27th, a Wednesday, were thin, he delayed his plans, prosecutors said. He broke into a boat and hid there overnight, according to court documents. The next morning, police officers discovered the stolen U-Haul and arrested Mr. Henry after he leapt over a security fence from the boat dock, according to prosecutors. The authorities first identified Mr. Henry through registration records left in his BMW, which was parked in Alexandria, near where the U-Haul was stolen, they said. This guy had a BMW. I read a few articles about this story. Henry didn't steal a U-Haul truck from the rental agency. He stole it from someone else who had rented it. That person saw where he parked his BMW and told police. Police eventually spotted the stolen U-Haul, and by that time, they knew who they were looking for. We're very lucky that this man, although well-educated, is actually pretty stupid. Anyone can rent a U-Haul truck, and no one's going to be looking for a rented U-Haul truck. This moron decided to steal one instead of filling out a rental agreement, and that's why he got caught before he could kill countless people. Mr. Henry did not have an escape plan, as he did not plan to survive the attack, prosecutors said. I was just going to keep driving and driving and driving, he is quoted as saying in a motion for detention filed on Monday by federal prosecutors. I wasn't going to stop. A detention hearing is scheduled for Tuesday at 12:45 p.m. in Federal District Court in Greenbelt, Maryland. So, this guy didn't plan to survive. He planned to kill until he got killed. This almost reminds me of Surah 9, verse 111 of the Quran. Verily, Allah has purchased of the believers their lives and their properties for the price that theirs shall be the paradise. They fight in Allah's cause, so they kill others and are killed. The believers don't spend their lives building computers, they kill until they get killed. Certainly no risk of this verse ever leading to violence. Now for the hypocrisy, and I'm going to bring this up over and over and over again until people get the point. Are we supposed to look into this man's ideology? Something convinced him that he should slaughter unbelievers in the name of Allah. Should we open Islam's most trusted sources and have a discussion about whether Islam actually promotes these kinds of attacks? Not according to Muslim groups and not according to leftists. According to Muslim groups and politicians and journalists and educators and actors, if you even think of looking into this man's ideology, you're a racist, Islamophobic, hate-mongering bigot. Should we put this man into the same category with other Muslims? Should we lump him together with peaceful Muslims? Absolutely not. Only a racist would do that. Notice, the New York Times article didn't even mention that Henry is a Muslim. We know he is because of the reference to ISIS, but it's not the sort of thing a newspaper should mention because his faith, his ideology, has nothing to do with the attack he was planning. Terrorism has no religion. Okay, so those are the rules when a Muslim carries out a terrorist attack. You don't examine his ideology. You don't associate him with anyone who shares his ideology. You don't mention his ideology. You treat him as an isolated lunatic who has no religion, and you move on. Now, what if this man were a non-Muslim who had planned to attack Muslims? Would we need to look into his ideology then? Well, sort of. If he describes himself as an eco-fascist or something like that, just ignore it and focus on anything that can be used to lump him together with anyone who is remotely critical of Islam. Would we lump him together with peaceful critics of Islam? Absolutely. According to many Muslims, there is no distinction whatsoever between peaceful critics of Islam and terrorists who slaughter Muslims. They're completely identical. So those are the rules for terrorist attacks against Muslims. Just to review, if a Muslim slaughters unbelievers in the name of Allah, you're a racist if you so much as think about examining his ideology, and under no circumstances do you associate the terrorist with peaceful Muslims. But if a non-Muslim slaughters Muslims, you immediately point to his ideology and search for anything that you can use to associate this man with peaceful critics of Islam or with anyone else you happen to despise. Utter hypocrisy. All we can do is expose it again and again and again. Until the next Islamic terrorist attack that has absolutely nothing to do with the ideology that commands it, be consistent, friends.